Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm excited for today's conversation. I have Liz Curran with us. She is part of the Radical Remission Project, and you've seen at least 3 episodes about Radical Remission. Dr. Kelly Turner, who wrote the books, has been here with us, and I'm excited to get to know Liz a little bit more and to share her with you because she has a different story than you're probably expecting, because I believe she did not have cancer. And so we're looking at Radical Remission from another perspective. If you're here on the podcast with me, come on over to YouTube because Liz is here with me and you get to meet her, jjflizanes.tv. And if you're here on YouTube, we need a podcast. So if you want to take us with you on your exercise or while you're cleaning your house or whatever you're doing to multitask, come on over to jjflizanes.com or go to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy or many of my shows on the Empowering Minds Network and download today's episode so you can keep it and take it with you always. Liz, welcome to the show.
I love that. Thanks so much for having me.
I can't wait to hear about your stories. As I reached out to Dr. Kelly to have ask her to be a part of the Consciousness Upgrade Summit, she referred me to you and wondered if you could be a part of it in her place, which I was thrilled to meet you. And so I'm excited to hear your story. And as we've talked before, you come to Radical Remission with a different spin because most people in Radical Remission are dealing with a cancer diagnosis and you did not. So why don't you take us back to whatever happened with you and got you here?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Well, my journey is a little different because it comes from how cancer impacted my family. My sister, who was, very, very close, we were very, very close to each other. She got diagnosed in 2014 with a very rare breast cancer that's like 1% of breast cancers. It's very, very rare and aggressive. And so she was diagnosed in January and passed away the same year in December. And her journey was very conventional, very, she did not know about radical remission or those healing factors because the book was being published that year. So we did not know about it and didn't know about other alternative approaches and integrative approaches and different healing lifestyle changes that can be included on a healing journey. So that was my introduction to cancer. And after she passed away, I, I knew that I wanted to do work for people in the sense of transformation. I just didn't know that I was going to lead me to the path of being a cancer health coach. So I was, trying to find my new path after she passed away and, tried a lot of different lifestyle changes that just intuitively felt better for me to, kind of overcome my grief and kind of get a handle on it and get back into living. And so during that time, I did a lot of different things, but I also had a friend who had a cancer diagnosis that was not treatable by conventional medicine. So she had to travel to Mexico to seek alternative treatments and found healing within, 6 months. She was essentially cancer-free. So she was not supposed to be here after that 1 year of no treatment, according to her prognosis. So that opened my eyes to a whole nother side of the cancer world that I didn't know existed. And so thus enters Radical Remission, the book Radical Remission, through knowing her and came to learn about the book. And when I opened up the book and read those table of contents, those 10 healing factors or 9 healing factors were in that book at the time. And I realized that all of those things were healing modalities that I had used on my kind of grief healing process. So there's a lot of, for the audience who is unfamiliar, there are physical and then there are also emotional and spiritual factors. So those emotional and spiritual factors and the physical ones all really played a role in my resilience and my ability to kind of continue down the path of living and not living in the past of, holding on to my loss.
Well, grief often leads to bronchitis and different other, lung cancer, even Christopher Reeve's wife never smoked a pack of cigarettes in her life, but died of lung cancer from grief, right? This huge, and taking care of her disabled husband and the life that they had versus like they used to have versus the life that they led to. And that is something that I don't think people understand really. The role that plays. And we're going to dive deep into that, like really deep into that on the summit, the Consciousness Upgrade Summit that Liz is going to be a part of coming up April 17th and 18th. Please, everybody sign up. Links will be in the show notes and underneath this video and on the podcast. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But how did you get to Kelly and how did you get to be working with the Radical Remission Project, because then I want to kind of hear a little bit about, and again, unless you're new to the show, which you might be, and if you are, welcome. The Radical Remission, I say this on a lot of shows because I have cancer patient clients who have come in and out of my work because of my work with Dr. Naisha Winters. And when we had partnered up like a couple years ago to start looking at sort of referrals and how to work with people emotionally, because Naisha's terrain-based 10-step program included the emotions. And I was like, what? Like, there's a doctor that's doing the, and she introduced me to Kelly and to Radical Remission. And I said very respectfully to Kelly, yeah, I knew all this. Thank you for writing it. I would never have done the research on this. There's a part of me that has that intuitive piece that says, oh yeah, of course, like it resonates. It makes sense. I see it. You don't need to convince me. Just like with Dr. Bruce Lipton's first book, Biology of Belief. I didn't need to read Biology of Belief. It says in the title, your beliefs affect your biology. End of story. I don't need to know anymore. I don't need to know how it works. I know that it works, right? It's like someone says there's gravity. Yep. You don't need to explain gravity to me. I see that's to me the correlation. It's so clear. It's so real. I don't need to be further convinced. But I recognize in the world that we live in, so many people do need more data. They need proof that these energetic, unseeable, invisible forces have visible factors and have visible, results, things that happen. So how did you go from your grieving about your sister? And I'm so sorry to hear about that. Obviously that was a divine, like this whole thing has led you to now, right? So now, and yeah, that's a whole other conversation we'll have on Summit, but about that sort of divine timing and soul level contracts that we have with people in this lifetime. But how did you then lead to working with Radical Remission Project?
So I knew I wanted to do transformative work, and I went into being a health coach and worked with people on change of their diets and their nutrition. And I found that because I was also learning so much from my other friend's journey and the alternative side of cancer, I was very interested in learning more about that. And I think that was just for like personal, yeah, I just wanted to know for myself, if this were to happen to me, what else would I do? So I found that Radical Remission had a teacher training, and I had already been coaching for a couple of years, and she was looking for health coaches to come on to become teachers of her Radical Remission workshop. So I went to the training, and it was, one of those weeks of your life where the direction and the course of your life is going to change. It was a very wonderful experience and, life-changing in so many ways. So that was in 2019. And then when 2020 hit, there was a pandemic, this thing called, COVID. And so everything went virtual with our workshops, and all of the teachers from around the world came together and taught what we called the Global Live Stream Radical Remission Workshop. And we reached about 400 people in those very early days of isolation. And it was such a beautiful experience to come to learn the impact that this information had on people and just their emotional response to just getting the information. And so with that, one of my colleagues that I worked with on that project, her name is Carla. She is my business partner now. We came together and started doing some group coaching and started really diving deep into the radical remission work that we had, been trained on just about 6 months earlier. So with that, we ended up growing a coaching practice and a membership where we have people that we work with now. But in fall of 2022, we had passionately been working on in this work for a couple of years, and we reached out to Kelly Turner to see if there was some ways that we could help her with training, because we really enjoyed helping with the teacher training. And she went on to say that she is looking to follow her strong reasons for living, which is one of the healing factors, and she wants to kind of dive into screenwriting, which is her passion, and her undergraduate degree in screenwriting from Harvard. She wanted to start utilizing that side of her heart. So with that, Carla and I have now taken over the day-to-day. We're the co-directors of the Radical Remission Project. We do the a lot of the mentoring of the new teachers and helping get spread the mission and the information about radical remission, working with doctors all over the world to bring these workshops to their locations and bring this information, and forming beautiful relationships with people all over the world to share these 10 healing factors with their communities so that people can know, like you said, none of it is really rocket science. It is not anything new, but what she did when she did the research, and just a side note, she traveled around the world and to 10 countries in 10 months and interviewed and then continued to research in medical journals over 1,500 different cases of what were titled spontaneous remissions and later renamed radical remissions. And so that work that she did, to your point, really brought to life, it just kind of brought all of these things that we know we can do and put them together in this, I like to call it a roadmap of how to things that you can use to kind of balance out your lifestyle, whether you're a cancer patient, whether you are someone that is struggling with a chronic illness or an autoimmune disease, or just someone that has the interest in health, a health seeker, or someone who's dealing. I like to utilize these and recommend them for emotional health. And I think that they're so powerful. And the work that she did to kind of compile it into a book that really just was very validating by her adding in the science behind it and the healing stories behind it, and all of that coming together to give people this almost manual of how they can, live a holistic lifestyle, was really just, I think that changed so many people's lives. I can't tell you how many people tell me to this day, oh, I carry it around with me everywhere I go. And I always look at it if I'm stressed or I need to revisit something. I'm always in there looking up different chapters and rereading them again and again. So the book's been such a helpful tool for so many people. And I'm so happy to be a part of it and help her continue to spread the word.
I love that she's doing that. Um, that's amazing. And I'm hoping she's going to write a screenplay about radical remission, that somebody's
Oh, she
radical
has
remission.
already. There is one. She's just looking for the right person to produce and direct.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're new to the show, and again, and I apologize, I have one of those memories that is like a steel trap. So of course, and it's my show, so I remember pretty much like not everything, but a lot of it. And I'm up to somewhere in the 800 to 1,000 episodes combined throughout the network, and or even more. And so I'll be like, oh yeah, we talked about that, and then I'll expect everybody else to remember that. So I'm sorry if I don't mean that. I have so much content that it takes a lifetime for people to kind of catch up if you're interested. But one of the things, if you haven't read Radical Remission and Radical Hope, the 10 factors, 6, I believe, out of the 10 are mental, emotional, and spiritual. And
Oh,
that's sort of,
7 actually.
oh, 7.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll
3
take the.
physical.
Okay, there's only 3 physical. So in that, I have started specializing in rewiring core wound patterns. And so in terms of the emotional piece, like it's about, it's like a little deeper. Like it's taking, like there's some general, meditation, journaling, like there's general things people do about their emotions, and even they go to therapy. But like I actually have a course called The Roadmap to Emotional Healing. And it starts with understanding your core wounds so you know what kind of healing modalities to choose. Your
Right.
roadmap through this feels like a general prescription for everybody, right? Like I think it's a roadmap and it's a prescription for all of us to sort of start by living our healthiest life at the baseline of these principles. Because again, there's also the personalizing of each of the principles to the person based on their situation and their, what they want and how they believe and things like that. So yeah, I love mentioning, and I said 6, and now it's 7. Yay, I was wrong. More is better. 7 out of 10 of those radical remission principles are mental, emotional, and spiritual. And it is, and it's when we look at our like intuition and our gut feelings, and I appreciate so much the work that Kelly has done and the work that Dr. Bruce Lipton has done and the work that people who are dealing with the non-physical to make them a reality and bring data and bring proof that they work. I'm doing it slowly with clients who, have done everything else, and then their blood sugar won't budge, and when they've gone through the healing process, and then like nothing they try, no fasting, no medication or supplements, no, like nothing has worked. And then we, break open their emotions, and then it drops, and their blood sugar drops immediately when it hasn't budged. So I'm slowly taking the people who are still tracking, and they've tried everything, and going, okay, let's go over here and let's work on this. And then all of a sudden their physical body changes based on what they're doing emotionally. And so I'm kind of gathering proof at the speed at which I'm willing to do it, because the data, to me, I get it, and I know why it's important. And there's sometimes a line between someone who's ready to hear it, because I'm curious if if there's a statistic or not. I would guess that based on all of the cancer patients in the world, that only less than 1% of them are actually on board or ready to receive the information in radical remission. Is there any kind of studies or any kind of like conscious awareness of out of all the cancer patients, how many people do alternative, and how many people do traditional standard of care?
I don't have stats on that. I will say that part of what we do is to try to just let people know they exist, because I think a large part of it is that, the conventional treatment path doesn't really lend you to learning about these things unless someone shares it with you. So, the alternative path, anyone who chooses to go that path, which is a much smaller percent, they're going to naturally find things because they're researchers, they're personal researchers. They're going to happen upon this book on their own. But most of the people that we do work with are more integrative. So they're working, they have a conventional treatment plan and all the other things as well. So they're doing, the kitchen sink approach where you just take it all in. But they have most often found radical remission through word of mouth. Someone shared it with them. And that's why we do interviews like this, because we want just more and more people to be aware of it as a resource. For sure.
There's a medical facility that I used to work in as a trainer back when I was personal training. I was part of he was a functional medicine doctor. Then we have the integrative nutritionist, and then there was me, the trainer, and the three of us sort of worked together with all patients on all things. And a couple of years ago, that physician got cancer. And they're like family to me. They're very close. And so, of course, I looked up what the emotional root of that particular cancer was and sent it to his wife, because I knew he wasn't necessarily going to be going down the path of what emotions caused my cancer. But as soon as I sent it to her, she goes, "Oh yeah, that's him." I was like, "Yeah, I know that's him." And then they started talking about the different things that were going to be changing. And of course, they went after the diet straight away as one of the things that they were going to change. Not that their diet was bad, but he became more keto at the time. Because of course they were paleo and low carb and the whole nine yards, and all organic, and she's regenerative farming. I mean, all of it. Talk about like, and I felt like it was a really good example of someone who's already really living very well, who then gets this diagnosis and then overcomes it pretty quickly. He might have done some chemo, but when I send him the emotional route, because I have the message from the body kind of points out all the different cancer emotional roots, because each chakra represents a certain energy, an emotional way that we interpret life and how we hold on to things. And as just in Chinese medicine, I'm sure if anyone has done acupuncture or has learned about Chinese medicine, you understand your meridians, you understand that each one of your organs holds a different energy. So your liver is where you hold anger, your lungs are where you hold grief. So take that into consideration. As I was sending that to him, I thought, okay, she's going to be on board. He's not going to believe it yet. So then I sent him the episode with Dr. Kelly, and I was like, listen to this, get this book. And then he did. And now he's cancer free. So it was really sort of, yeah, it was wonderful to see. And also since I personally know, and I'm very aware of all of the players in that situation, like I understand all of those things, to be able to look at the emotional root and to be able to say, oh yeah, that's him. I can see how that is you in your life in many, many ways. So yeah, when you do interviews like this, and I can share them, and people can share them, and people can remember, because that's the other thing too, is that when someone has a diagnosis, and I have plenty of those in my audience, who, it's like when they're ready, like the timing of, oh, they're going to try this, and then that kind of doesn't work, or they're going to go do this, and then that kind of doesn't work. And then all of a sudden it's remembering, oh, I've never really delved into that yet. I haven't dove into that, and I haven't figured that out yet. that's the one thing that, oh, out of the 10 things that I've tried, it's time to look at this. So I think it's a really good checklist for someone to just health wise, even to get the book, and doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, or even if you have one, it's a great checklist to say, yes, I do this. Yes, I do this. Yes, it is. Oh, I don't really do this. Maybe I need to
Right.
look into this a little bit more. So I know that you guys also have a course, I
Mhm.
believe, that is for
Yep.
the average person. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We have the Radical Remission Workshop, and that is if it's in person, it's typically done over the course of a weekend, Friday night to Sunday afternoon. But virtually, we typically do it over 5 weeks. We'll cover each factor for an hour. So it's a 10-hour virtual workshop. In person, it tends to be longer because we'll kind of be able to do more in-person activities. But the workshop is great because it brings the book to life. So it was born because everybody read the book. They thought it was great. It was a New York Times bestseller. And then they said, Kelly, how do we, do this for ourselves? So she went and created the workshop. And then the workshop really takes each person through each factor. We do explain, how it came up in the research. We explain some research studies around it. We talk about a healing story from someone who used that primarily as what they would attribute to their healing. And then we'll do an activity for each person to enhance that factor in their life. And then we have what we call our game plan. So at the end of each factor, we have them set their personal goals for 1 week, 1 month, and 6 months for each factor. And then at the end, they have this one sheet that has all their goals listed. And we tell them, you only have to work at one at a time, or whatever you feel ready for. But this is not, homework for the next week for you to conquer all 10 of these factors. It's really learning about them while they're in the workshops, and then using some time to embody them. And then if they need more assistance, then we all also coach, so we can help people implement them into their own lifestyles to overcome obstacles that might be being presented based on wherever they are on their healing journey.
And is there a self-study course, one that's already done? I know you said is that the 10-hour?
The 10-hour is the virtual ones that we do. They're,
They're
synchronous
live?
live. But there is an online course that Dr. Turner created prior to the release of Radical Hope. So it's only covering the 9 factors, but it is available. And what's nice about it is it's self-paced. So she did it in case there was ever people who were like maybe they were in the hospital and they just needed some inspiration and they wanted to do it while they were or they needed to do it at a time where the workshop wasn't an option. And that was much more necessary before the pandemic and before people, like, as a culture, we've adapted to being online a lot more than we were. So now it's just a lot more accessible for people to do it virtually. They're offered all over the world by all of our different coaches at different times, different time zones. And so there's always something available, hopefully, to meet everybody's needs virtually. But the online course is there, certainly as a tool for people who want to kind of just do it self-paced on their own.
And recently, I think within the year, you guys launched the Radical Remission podcast.
Yes, yep, that's right. In November, we started the Radical Remission Stories That Heal podcast, and my business partner Carla and I are the hosts, and we interview people who have overcome the odds of their diagnosis. So someone who is considered a radical remission survivor, and I'll have that Radical Hope. Here's the book if you're watching. And they're so beautifully just like right there on the intro. I have it highlighted. I like to share it. A radical remission is a statistically unlikely remission in which a person either 1, heals without conventional medicine at all, 2, first tries conventional treatments which do not lead to a remission, so then they try alternative treatments which do lead to a remission. And then 3rd, which I think is probably most of the people that we tend to work with, are people who use a combination of conventional and alternative treatments at the same time in order to outlive a dire prognosis, which is less than 25% 5-year survival rate. So those are the people that we interview on the podcast, people who have overcome the odds of their diagnosis, and they may have had treatment, they may not have had treatment, but whatever the case, that's irrelevant. They've outlived it, and we want to know how, and we want to share that. So those are the people that we interview, as well as healers who have witnessed in their own practice 5 or more radical remissions. So we really like to share healing modalities and healing stories, and really give the audience an opportunity to have hope, as we like to say, radical hope, to know that it is possible. And one of the main reasons I wanted to, a year ago when we were starting the idea of getting this launched, I really have been so passionate about sharing how late stage cancer is not a death sentence. And late stage cancer can be, it can be a wake up call. And yes, it can be very trying, but it does not mean that it is a death sentence and that you can have a completely normal life again afterwards. And so many of the stories that we share on the podcast are people who are 20, 30 years out of their diagnosis and just living beautiful, thriving lives. And they're walking miracles. So I want to provide those stories for hope for people to really hold on to that when they need it.
I think we're going to dive into that on the summit a little bit more because I think all physical ailments are a wake up call. I think there's plenty of books written about the body and the body talking to you, whether it be messages from the body or body talk kind of things, right? For years, there are a ton of books on messages from the body, basically, different things that the body is telling you to do. If you're not listening, it'll just going to get louder and louder and bigger until it takes over your life and forces you to listen. And even then, some people don't listen to their body. And that's okay. And I don't necessarily think there's a right or a wrong. I think sometimes that we need that collectively on a soul level, we've decided to be here, and sometimes someone's death can help also. I mean, your sister's death pushed you into this healing work, and without that, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. And I think that is divinely orchestrated. I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think that's that's my belief about it. And so for a lot of people, and I think you've had Anita Morjani on the show. She's been on my show also. She's a friend of a friend, and like we kind of live near each other. And yeah, Anita's story in all her books, right? Dying to Be Me is definitely one of those stories of, dying, like literally crossing over and then coming back in, right? Or Dr. Eben Alexander, who's not a cancer story, but his story to me is law of attraction, proof of heaven is 100% law of attraction, because he so badly wanted to know the truth, even though he didn't believe everybody's near-death experience stories, that he had to, but because of how smart he was with his brain and knowing exactly where, the center of the brain, which creates illusions, are. And then he got meningitis in that exact place in his brain. Like, of all the places, you can't get any more perfectly orchestrated than for him to attract getting meningitis in the part of the brain that he was using as an excuse to tell all the people who had their near-death experiences, no, that didn't happen, because that part of the brain created this illusion. Right. This is not an accident. And it changed this very, very smart man who had a lot of resistance to anything that wasn't allopathic medicine to be on the complete other side of this now. And I love sharing those stories. He's been on the show 4 times. Unfortunately, he can't be at this summit this year, but he'll probably do next year. But he's an amazing story also, because we have the science behind his science that he looked at, the Newtonian science that he was using. But now, of course, he's moved away from that. So I definitely hope that anyone who is listening who has any kind of, like you said, late stage diagnosis, my question to you would be, what is the body wanting you to wake up from and change? I see too many people, from my perspective, working with all kinds of people in different chronic ailments and illnesses, who want so badly to keep their life the way it is. And they just do the things on the side, and they go, oh, I'm going to do these things, or the way they do them is so stressful. Like, they do the 10 steps or whatever their protocol is, and the protocol brings them stress. And I'm like, the physical piece cannot make up for the emotional piece.
Yeah.
The emotional piece can make up for the physical piece. Absolutely. You can have how many of those stories in Radical Remission did someone stop doing all the treatments with that one guy that was on his roof watching the sunset with the birds and playing music, did nothing, and he healed? And you have to say, well, like, you can't make sense of that from a physical standpoint and say, this is what happened. I mean, you can, if you look at quantum physics, if you can say that the container, the stress, the concern, the trust, the surrender, the trying energy that a lot of people have when they're trying to heal their disease. I mean, that gripping right there is not healing. That is not a healing container. You have to let go and let the body do what it's supposed to do, but it's not going to do it if you're like this and don't fight about it. And and sorry guys, I'm squeezing my hands for those who are on the podcast, and that's why I made
All
that sound.
clenched up.
I'm all clenched up because we get really clenched and we don't understand what surrender is, or what, like, people in one of my rewiring your core wound patterns, it's a 3-month program, and one of the ladies was talking about, and everyone does this when they start any of my programs and they're sort of new to my work. There's a feelings and needs list that I use in the beginning, and every course starts with understanding that no matter what your story is, no matter what your core wounds are, no matter what your circumstances are, in every red hot minute you have a choice of understanding what you're feeling, what the need is that's not being met, or the perception of the need, and then to create some strategies to get that need met, and understanding and knowing that you personally can do all of it, that you do not need anyone to change for you to feel better. You don't need to control anybody else or any circumstances, that you in that minute can figure that out. But what's on this list, there's 100 basic feeling words and there's 85 or 86 basic human needs. But one need everyone thinks is not on the list is control. They're like, I think I need control. I was like, no, control is an illusion. It is not a need. We do not have a need for control. But everyone thinks that that's what it is. But so many people I see who don't get better because they never give up control. They're always on this fight of, and you had told me before we started recording, there was another episode I did with Tara, and Tara was a part of Radical Remission, and you let me know that Tara has since transitioned a couple of years ago, and she had breast cancer. And I remember when she was on the show, she was working with Radical Remission, and she had overcome, I guess, the first time she'd had breast cancer. Maybe did she have it a couple times, or did it never really go away?
Yeah, she was, I think she was in remission at one point.
Yeah, and we were talking about some of the things that she did to change her stress level. And it was like she hated her job, she didn't like her marriage, and she quit her job, she got divorced, and she moved. Now, for a lot of you and for anyone, that will relieve your stress right away. You will remove what you think is stressful. But I think the message that I want to make sure people understand is that it's not about other people, and it's not about, not that you need to stay in that job or stay in an unhappy marriage, but if you just think changing circumstances is going to fix what's going on inside of you, it won't. It doesn't mean it can temporarily, for sure, because you're removing the stimulus. But for me, the definition of healing, this is my quote that I've been using after watching hundreds of people be coached and in therapy, and having and watching from afar, having them just basically change circumstances and avoid. And I said, that's not healing. Healing is when you're different in the same situation. That's healing, because you have healed something inside of you. So you no longer react or perceive the way you did before, because you
love that.
Try the best you can. You are never going to control circumstances. You can't control people. You can't control the world. You can't control any of it. So how do you heal in an environment? You can. Do you stay there? Do you choose to stay there? No, but you don't blame them and say it's their fault. You have to go within, and why are you reacting to this? In this course, this small group coaching, one of my participants, she was talking about being overwhelmed with the idea of clutter. This was like this week. And I said, so what? I should show you my desk. I said, so what? Like, why does that bother you? What is it that you're, what's the story that you have going on around it? Is it a should? Is it a, like, are you not okay with it? Is it a pressure? Like what's attached to that? Because we want to say, well, if you just clean your clutter, you'll be fine. And I used to grow up and be in houses where family members, where I'm a Pisces. My mother's a Pisces. My dad is a Cancer. We're a water sign house. My brother's an Aries, but and they're pack rats. They're not dirty or anything, and they're not like hoarders, but they lived in the same house for almost 50 years, and so they don't throw things away. And if someone dies, they bring the stuff into the house, right? It's not great. There's too much shit in my parents' house, but there is a level of being comfortable in sort of chaos or organized chaos. One of my bookkeeper told me that I was very organized. I said, I am. She goes, you know where everything is. You can find everything like that. But if you would see my office, you'd be like, how do you function in that? I'm like, because I know where it all is. I have a diffused awareness as a woman to not have to look, like, I know where things, not to mention I have a good memory. So I know where everything is. Do I want it to be like this? I don't, but it doesn't bother me. I don't feel anxious. I don't lose sleep. So why is it that I can sit in this, but someone else wants to pull their hair out, right? It's not circumstantial, it's internal. And for me, that's why healing is when you're different in the same situation. So we kind of always joke in the groups, someone will come on, oh, Marco, and say, I was different in the same situation. It's almost like evidence of healing, evidence of change, because I'm perceiving things differently now. I have a different interpretation. That core wound's not being activated anymore. So I just find it, it's unfortunate. Tara was, she was a lovely person, but it's a story that I've heard over and over again, a story that I've heard that people come to the table and they don't, they make drastic changes externally, but they don't make them internally. And so something else happens. And I don't know what you've seen with that, because I'm sure by now there's been hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people that you've seen come through Radical Remission and the courses and the workshops. I mean, what's your experience with sort of what you think the biggest factor is for the people that have the hardest time sort of getting better?
Well, I would say that each factor is so personal that it's so hard. Like everybody's journey is different. It really, I mean, there'll be someone who says, I need more increasing positive emotions. Like that factor is something I need, where, the next 10 people are fine with that. So, going back to Tara, she was very into Dr. Joe Dispenza, and she was really trying to do her healing in that path and her own way. But there might have been other areas or other factors that weren't being changed, so that needed it, and maybe she didn't realize it. So it's hard you really have to follow your intuition and really look deeply at what it is that you need for your healing, and think about what we call them contributing factors. Like, what were the contributing factors that kind of like maybe led you mentally, physically, or emotionally, led you to this path? And if people reflect, there are definitely things that come up, whether it's, like you were just talking about, a house, a job, all the different things on paper, but also there are people who are like, oh, my relationship with my mom, or like they know what deep wounds are there, I guess is a good way to put it, that need to be addressed. And sometimes they don't want to. Other times they're not ready to. They might want to, but they're not ready to. So really taking a hard look at what are those contributing factors, and then what of the radical remission healing factors needs to be put into place to try to help balance that out.
It's not funny that you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza. I have had several people who have come to me and said, I've spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars on Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I still don't know why I have the same patterns that I have. And that's why in my work, like, so you started out health coaching and I started out as a personal trainer, and with people and their bodies, I was working very physically. I was working on, their hormones. I was working on biochemistry. I was working on biomechanics. I was working on rehabbing joints and building muscle and changing body fat composition. But at the same time, I was also, you can't take away the behavioral piece. You can't expect, like, why does someone want to look better? And that's what most of them were doing. It was about looks, not about like necessarily longevity. Sometimes it became about longevity. For me, since I was 21, it was always about longevity, because all you have to do is look at someone in their 70s or 80s or 90s who didn't take care of themselves and go, do I want to be like that? And then you go, oh no, I need to start doing something better now
Yeah.
to protect where I'm going and to change the trajectory of what my body's going to respond to. But when you're working with people who, on diet and exercise, and you can't ignore the story. You can't ignore the stress. You can't ignore when someone's emotionally eating and they blow their whole program because they're addicted to numbing their emotions with food. And so it led me
Yeah.
down the path of, and my life at that time led me down the path of learning more about addiction and understanding that we all have addictions. And unfortunately, those of us that don't have substance addictions either have food or control. But even people with substance abuse, like, control is pretty much across the board. Probably the biggest addiction that most of us have is the addiction to control. So as my, story sort of changed through personal training and wanting to share what I was learning and what I was doing with law of attraction and quantum physics and emotional healing with my clients, they weren't that interested, because that's not why they hired me in the first place. And so I took that big leap myself to becoming an empowerment strategist and starting my podcast, and then doing events, and then even hiding behind other healers and people thinking, oh, I don't know if I can provide the aha moment for everybody. And then, and that was my journey. And finally, people kept saying, we want more of you, want more of you. And then finally being able to know, trust, and deliver a multiple day event by myself and have transformations all over the place and have people change their lives. That was like, okay, like that was I didn't believe in myself to do that.
Mhm.
And then I had to go through that to learn that. And so like you, with being able to look at circumstances in Dr. Dispenza, I created something called the core wound map. And so I'm hoping anyone that wants to learn about the core wound map and rewiring your core wound patterns will come to the summit, to the Consciousness Upgrade Summit, which is free. It's going to be 2 full days, April 17th and 18th. To me, it's the prescription also emotionally, that if you're going to do a deep dive into your emotions, know what you're healing. And if you don't know what you're healing, it's like why people do blood work to look at, what is it going on with my body and what do I need to change? Well, if you can have ideas, but if you don't dive deep into the core wounds to understand sort of the blueprint from your entire life, every decision you've ever made, every relationship, every why you do what you do in life is based on your core wounds. So let's go back real quick, figure out what they are, and then figure out the different layers, which is I work on how people like, how do you keep your core wounds alive now that you know what they are? Because that happened when you were young, but now you could be treating yourself differently, but most of us don't, because we have belief systems that get put into our brains from 0 to 10 that become reality, and they're not. They were just interpretations of behavior from our caregivers. But that's, your evolution into what you're doing now. And I've had that similar like evolution of like health coach, personal trainer into sort of emotional deep dive healing, the healing modality, which is super powerful, and all of them are necessary. All of them are necessary to look at. That's like saying, well, what's better? Should I eat protein or vegetables? Well, you need both of them. Do I need to take vitamins or should I just eat better? Well, you kind of need both of them because we're kind of depleted in our soil these days. So we kind of do need to supplement with stuff. So it's not one or the other. It's and. There's a lot of and when it comes to, I think, this kind of work. And then the roadmap course, like you were mentioning, the roadmap, to me, there's also, like you said, everyone's journey is definitely very different, and understanding what your needs are, what are the healing modalities you need and why, so that you can make those choices. But I think Radical Remission for everybody across the board, healthy, unhealthy, healing, not healing, wanting to stay healthy, being proactive is a place to start, because it gives you all the factors and you can check off how well you're doing in each one of those factors. So if you don't have Radical Remission and Radical Hope, everybody, please get that ASAP and give it to all your friends who are struggling with things. Refer them to the website and to the podcast, Radical Remission. And quickly, I just want to mention about the summit. So Liz is going to be back with us for the Consciousness Upgrade Summit. One of the reasons why I reached out to Dr. Kelly and to Radical Remission is because, again, 7 out of the 10 factors of healing in Radical Remission are mental, emotional, and spiritual. And that's what I'm talking about. It's this idea that our computers, our telephones, our software, everything has an upgrade. Everything keeps getting updated and expanded over time. So when's the last time you upgraded your consciousness? And how do we even look at that? And what is the relationship between that and your healing? And so that's what Liz and I are going to talk about on that summit. If you are listening to this on Radical Remission or on anywhere part of Liz's world, Dr. Kelly Turner's world, the link is the consciousupgrade.com. But if you're wanting to know that you're going to be involved, you want to get all the information right now, there's a code that you can use to sort of upgrade. You can ask them for it and be a part of their list and get that also. I will put it in the show notes under this video and in the podcast. But if you use the code Liz, it'll take $200 off the all-inclusive exclusive pass, which basically gets you all of the videos. So and all the content to keep forever. It's Dr. Bruce Lipton, it's Lynn McTaggart, it's Meba Katz and Dane Here and Dr. Nasha Winters, and so many amazing people that are going to really help transform your sex life, your relationships, your communication. Harville Hendricks, Helen LaKelly Hunt. It's so many people to give you and contribute to an action plan for you upgrading your consciousness so you can enjoy the healing from all these different modalities, and maybe even find some new things that you haven't done before that can really make a difference in your life and your longevity. So with that, any other thoughts you want to share, Liz, about anything we've talked about today?
No, I'm just really excited for everyone to check in on the summit and really learn more about this, the consciousness and how to really what does that mean, and how can you utilize the information that you're going to receive in your own life?
Excellent. So again, the code is Liz to take off $200 off the all exclusive pass, which gets you all 18 or 19 or 20 videos, like 20, more than 20 hours worth of content for $97. And if not, it's free. It's free. Come, it's completely free. And look at the list, look at the website, see when Liz is speaking. She is scheduled, but I don't know it off the top of my head right now. So check the schedule to make sure you come and you be with her, because we're going to take this conversation even deeper with even more for you to specifically expand your consciousness. So no matter what you're reading or doing, you can get the most out of it, and you can sort of upgrade where you're operating and evaluate whether or not you're in a place for the most optimal healing. So thank
Yes,
you
I
again,
did
Liz.
find it. Our interview is Wednesday, April 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central or Pacific.
Great. So if you're a Pacific time, take your lunch break and come meet Liz, and you can ask questions. She'll be live. We're going to just give you a lot more content of things that you can do and have this conversation again. So noon on Wednesday, April 17th, 3 o'clock Eastern time. It'll be an hour long, and you can only register at theconsciousnessupgrade.com. Or if you get an email from Liz or Radical Remission, you can do it that way too. So look forward to having you there. Any other things you want to mention? You said
That's
that.
it.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. I know I'm in the middle of doing this interview. I'm like, I don't want to move screens. I'll just put it in
Oh,
the show
that's
notes.
okay. No, I think it's good to have that info out there, and I look forward to meeting people on the live.
Excellent. Hope to see you all there. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks.